We'll go ahead and start with the March 28th Board of Waterworks Trustee meeting. The first item on the agenda is our consent agenda, which includes the minutes from February 28th, 2023 Board of Waterworks Trustees meeting, the minutes of the March 14th, 2023 Planning Committee meeting, financial statements, list of payments for February 2023, a summary of the CEO approved expenditures in excess of $20,000, and the next meeting date of April 25th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Ted, is there anything in particular worth noting in that?
Nothing to pull out unless someone has a question.
I don't see any questions. So all in favor of passing the consent agenda? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Do we have Diane online? Okay. We'll move on to the next agenda item. It's our public comment period and providing an update on regional governance. So this is a very exciting time in this in this lengthy process of all the work that both staff and board members have put in to get this conversation and this collaboration down the road. But I'll actually turn to Ted if you want to give the update of where we are and why it is so exciting.
Sure, thank you, Andrew. This tomorrow actually will be a big day. Our intent is to send out the second draft of the regional governance 28 agreement tomorrow to all of our regional partners. The second draft incorporates comments that we received from nearly all of our partners in the region. It incorporates all of the comments that we've received from bond counsel and from other experts related to the kind of legal intricacies of this agreement. There's also been quite a bit of effort put in here in the last month or so, and just sort of resolving the last nits and nats. And we have proposals for all of that. So we have a document that is essentially a consensus document, nearly consensus between the three board managed utility staffs, general managers, West Des Moines, Urbandale, and Des Moines Water. So that will be going out tomorrow with a request for communities to review and respond in 6 weeks. So
And I don't think it should be lost on any of us, and I don't think it is, that just all the work that staff have put into getting us to this point, creating a near consensus document of this magnitude together. I think that the press release points to it exactly. It's quite an undertaking and the first of its kind in our area, and probably one to be replicated nationally. So I appreciate both Sue and Diane and Graham's work on this, as well as Amy and Ted and all the other staff members that have played a role in getting us here.
thank you. I would echo that. Amy has been a real asset to the process. She's put a ton of time in, and I also don't want to forget that Rick Holm has kind of been
Yes, definitely.
the architect of the foundational agreement that we have worked on and built upon. So it's been a real team effort.
Anything else?
Nothing else from me.
Then we'll move forward to our action items. So our first action item is a capital loan note, so not to exceed 1.1 million or 1,100,000 water revenue capital loan notes.
And if I might, Andrea, give a little background on what we're doing here today. Part of our regional initiative here is to expand the Saylorville water treatment plant to meet the growing needs of the metro community. And part of that process will be to install a couple of fairly significant sections of transmission pipeline, large diameter pipeline, almost 3 miles pipeline to facilitate moving water around the system and ensuring that all of our customers have the capacity that they need. What we're looking at here today is what they call a planning and design model. We're going to the state revolving fund to borrow a little bit less than $1.1 million for the design of those transmission mains. And that's what all of this public hearing and motioning will be about here, but we are in the process of design and ready for the board to approve this action.
So I would like to open up a public hearing on the authorization of a loan and disbursement agreement and the issuance of notes to evidence the obligation thereunder. And I'll ask Ted, have we received any written comments?
We have received no written comments.
Okay. And is there anyone here to speak to this part of the public hearing? And with that, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and ask for a motion and roll call vote to adopt the resolution instituting proceedings to take additional action for the authorization of a loan and disbursement agreement and the issuance of $1,098,700 water revenue capital loan notes.
So moved.
Second. Roll call vote.
Bolton,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard, yes.
So the resolution instituting the proceeding to, do I reread that? I think.
You can just say chairperson.
Okay. So I upon that vote, declare that the hearing on the authorization of entering into loan and disbursement agreement and the issuance of the note has been adopted. I'm now looking for a motion and roll call vote to adopt resolution approving and authorizing a form of interim loan and disbursement agreement and the authorizing and providing for the issuance and securing the payment of $1,098,700 water revenue capital loan notes, anticipation project note, series 2023, under the provision of the Code of Iowa and providing for a method of payment of said note.
Wow. So moved. Second.
And I'll have a roll call vote, please.
Bolton,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Gillette,
Yes.
Hubbard, yes.
And with that, the resolution entitled, the resolution approving the resolution noted in the board packet has been adopted.
Hold on. Take a breath.
Are we good? Did we do it? Okay.
Get really good.
You will.
All right. So the next agenda item 3B is a request authorization to reestablish the date of a public hearing for the 2023 Des Moines Waterworks main replacement. Contract 1 as the date of the April 2023 board meeting.
Andrea, this is a project that we brought to the board earlier in the year and established a public hearing as the date of the March board meeting. This board meeting today, but unfortunately there were some delays, part due to modifications to the plans to include some lead service line replacement on this contract. And so in order to ensure that the bidders had an appropriate amount of time to put their bids together, we are here to ask that the public hearing for this be rescheduled to next month. The plans for this project are now on the street as of 16th of March. The plans are out, done, so there's a window to take a look at this. Hopefully we'll get some good prices next month.
Great, thank you. So I need a motion to authorize staff to reestablish the date of public hearing for 2023 Des Moines Water Main Replacement Contract 1 as the date of the April 2023 board meeting.
So moved. Second.
So any questions or discussion on this topic? Okay. Then all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Moving on to item 3C, a request authorization to reestablish the date of the public hearing for the Maffitt East Feeder Main valve vault as the date of the April 2023 board meeting.
A little bit of a different situation here. Almost exactly 2 years ago, we entered into an MOU with West Moines Waterworks to construct a valve vault that we need to manage our system in a way that will allow them to take more water for some facilities that are projected to go south of the river, in their south territory. We hired a consultant actually to do that design for us, and they have been working on it for some time. The original cost back in the conceptual stage, the original cost of this project was estimated to be around $600,000. When we got to the point of bidding, the consultant's estimate was $850,000. As you can see, the bids came in at over $1 million, basically $1.3 million. So we've had some conversations with West Moines about how those costs would be covered. Those conversations, frankly, are ongoing. Discuss with them how we'll move this project forward, but we just need a little bit of extra time to work that out. The contractor's bids are good for 45 days. So that gives us opportunity to move the public hearing to the next board meeting, if we would like to do that. Reestablish the public hearing before the April board meeting, give us time to work out the cost coverage here on this project.
So I need a motion to reestablish the date of the public hearing for the Maffitt East Feeder Main Valve Vault project as the date of the April 2023 board meeting. Motion,
So moved.
second.
Second. Buzzers.
Yeah.
I have a question, I guess. So this is a project that would supply water. So how would this be handled if we were currently regionalized?
That's a great question, and we discussed that question upstairs this week. I think in this case, because this is a facility, a valve that West Moines specifically needs to facilitate movement of water through the system for their benefit primarily, that even under regionalization, they would be primarily responsible. And so I don't think it would be much different, other than instead of Moines Waterworks handling the design, bidding, negotiation with West Moines, I think Pacific Island Waterworks. But I think the responsibility in terms of the cost.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Great. With that, all in favor to reestablish the date of the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item 3D, award the 2023 through 2028 master service agreements for cathodic protection design, construction testing and geotechnical and land acquisition services.
Andrea, this is kind of an exciting item, actually. For me, this is a new process, and it's one of the things that's brought to us as ideas from her past experiences. The master service agreements are agreements where we do our request for qualifications, we qualify the contractors, we put an agreement in place with them for a 5-year period with indefinite scope, and then when we need them to do work, we can just simply go to them and say, hey, we can do this. And we have pricing already in hand in terms of their rates, not the actual price of the work, but we know what they're going to charge, so you know that they're qualified for the work. We've actually did RFQs in 13 different categories, is that right? These are just the first 3 that the team has been able to do evaluation of the qualification. Are bringing it here today to request the board's permission to enter into these master service agreements. Cathodic protection. First one, something we don't do a ton of cathodic protection work. It's somewhat of a proprietary process, and so probably be best suited, or we would be best suited by choosing one of those consultants, which is the recommendation. As you can see, we're recommending the cathodic protection service master service agreement be awarded to Corpro. The one related to construction testing and geotechnical work. There are a lot of companies that can do that. Some of them have different specialties, but there are three, I believe, that have been identified as consultants who we would want to enter master service contracts with. And then the land acquisition is the third one. We had a number of proposals. Interestingly enough, a couple of these actually gave us proposals to sub to the other one. We are actually going to recommend use. We don't do a lot of land acquisition. Frankly, we don't need a large stable of land acquisition companies, but the teams brought forward one that they would recommend entering a master service agreement with. So the recommendation, as you can see there, is execute master service agreements with the Corpro for the cathodic protection design services, Allender Butsky Team Services, and Terracon construction testing and geotechnical services, and JCG for land acquisition services. Primarily local easements and things, but we're doing a lot of that's the recommendation.
So I need a motion to authorize the CEO and general manager to execute 5-year master service agreements with Corporo for the cathodic protection design, Allender Butsky Team Services, and Terracon for construction testing, geotechnical services, and JCG Land Services for the land acquisition services.
So moved. Second.
I've got a question. I think this is an obvious answer, but I want to ask it anyway. So we need work in these areas. This is our vendor. We won't go out to anyone else, even if there was a better price or, I mean, the agreement's a two-way agreement, is what I'm asking.
Lindsay, can you help with that one?
No, I mean, you might contact them, like say, the land people, and they may not have staffing availability or something. You may have to, or there might be a certain situation. You would have to go, but likely any work would be done.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. We know what it's gonna be.
But it's not necessarily, I mean, it doesn't constrict you from going out, but as far as, I mean, if there are certain. You know.
Yeah, there was a special,
Yeah, exactly.
I'm, you know, again, I'm trying to, okay,
But it doesn't really,
so there's more flexibility there.
So it's primary, not exclusive.
yeah,
And these items, you know, are design or testing, they're not generally, I mean, you're paying for labor, not necessarily a physical infrastructure or anything to that degree, so.
yeah, it's all level and effort, and so when you negotiate this. And we'll give you, you know, the breakdown of hours, and then your other rates. Yeah.
If something unforeseen happened, there was a spike in the economy, something happened, and one of these vendors felt like they couldn't honor that price, do they have a ability to come back and say, we can no longer honor that price?
Yeah, usually you allow them adjustment, you know.
You know, I just, again, Lindsay, thank you for bringing these things forward, because we've been doing the same thing that we've always known to do, you know, that has worked well, but to me, this is the difference between having a lot of vendors and having some partners. It's a real trust back and forth between the utility as well as the vendor, as the partner, so keep bringing them, and every time we do the consent agenda, I keep thinking, wondering when Lindsay's gonna make that recommendation about the spending of the CEO, because we have asked some of the others, and we know we're very low. And again, that's time, and that's time is money, so keep going.
Any other questions or discussion? Then with that, all those in favor to execute the 5-year master service agreement as previously read, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The next item, 3E, license agreement for the right to farm land at Moffett Reservoir.
Yes, Andrea, we have about 1,500 acres of property, including Moffett Reservoir itself and then around the reservoir and below the dam. Historically, we have licensed a producer, a farmer to farm as much as 160 acres of that land. Over time, we've sort of reduced that amount to eliminate the acreage that was in floodplain, the acreage that we needed for other purposes. This year, we're actually reducing it another 10 acres because it's in the watershed of the reservoir. I just feel it's more appropriate to put that into the hay, which you'll see an item F here, but we traditionally bid this every 3 to 5 years. The last 2 times we bid it, the same producer, Flynn Farms, Vernon and Kelly Flynn have been the high bidder by a significant amount. We're proposing to extend the agreement 1 more year at the rate of $261 an hour, and then likely we'll bid next year. Thank you very much. Hours. We're proposing to extend this agreement 1 more year at the same rate, and then likely we'll bid next year for another 3-year term. And we're requesting authorization to execute that 1-year extension.
So we need a motion to authorize the chairperson to execute the limited and non-exclusive license agreement for the right to farm Des Moines Water Works agricultural land for the 2023 crop year.
So moved.
Second.
I have a question. So bidding for ag rights, do we lay out all the specifications, like specifically, you know, we mentioned cover crops and other conservation efforts, and then they tell us how much they're willing to pay per acre? Or do they tell us how much they're willing to pay and what practices they're willing to do?
We have certain specifications that we include in the agreement related to fertilizer application and some things like that we expect them to do. And then we actually include in the agreement that we will pay for the cover crops. So they give us a price that they're going to pay us, and then we reimburse them. Actually, we just reduce their payment by the amount that they certify or they show us that they spent on the cover crops. And we do that because we ask them to do some different things from time to time in terms of cover crop application and how they're going to do it and what they're going to do. Because we're learning as we do that. But we have some expectations and requirements in the agreement. They give us a price based on those expectations, and then the cover crops.
Okay, so they know our expectations when they bid, not they're coming up and making offers on expectations. Okay,
That is correct.
thank you. Any other questions or discussion?
So I was just curious, so it's sort of a research capability for waterworks as well to learn.
Yeah, research is a strong word. It's more satisfying curiosity, frankly. We're just very interested in how successful cover crops can be if they're flown on versus drilled in versus sprayed with this, you know, the cover crop seeder to help purchase with both the city of Des Moines and the Department of Ag. Initially, you know, we've been doing this for decades. When I came to Waterworks, we were leasing this land. Only very recently, and just since the Flynn's have been our producer, have we started asking them to plant cover crops. That's a fairly new thing. And they've been so flexible. We've also had them plant prairie strips, planted several of those. Some of them they said were too restricted, and so they took them out. They've been very flexible, and we are learning. We're seeing we gained some understanding of the processes, but I couldn't legitimately call it research.
That's okay, but
Yeah.
fair. And I was curious just because I think like I personally an advocate of where possible returning lands to native planning uses. And if it's a small amount of production and a small amount of revenue, would that ever be the opportunity to return something? But if we're learning from it, then that's
Yeah, and it's a very small amount of revenue, frankly, in terms of our total revenue. And we have returned several fields to more natural settings. You'll see in the next item, the 10 acres that we are going to return to, they're gonna put it in hay ground right now. And frankly, that just limits our maintenance responsibilities. We don't have to mow it, it's in hay, but we may at some point in the future look at turning that into prairie or something and making it part of the park. It's immediately adjacent to what is now Maffett Reservoir Park, and it's adjacent to the timber that surrounds the reservoir. So there's opportunities there to do some neat things like that, not only just natural, but park, and down below the dam, there were a couple of fields that occasionally flooded, and we just returned those to natural sort of floodplain state. That, the 90 acres that's down there that we are continuing to farm, it's a little bit of revenue. But there were other ideas. I would hate to just stop farming and let it go because it would be pretty scrubby for a very long time. There might be other things we could do. That wouldn't be appropriate for prairie because of floods. That prairie grass doesn't work well. But there, we could plant trees or
There will be some wetland restoration and mitigation as well.
potentially. Some of it's pretty wet.
So Ted, this is a topic for later, but as regionalization moves forward, you and I have had some discussions about the future of Maffett Lake. I mean, Des Moines Waterworks Park is something that we have all agreed. Des Moines Waterworks will maintain that land and hold that land because it's of special interest to our residents here in Des Moines. But Maffett Lake is a little bit different. It's not in the city of Des Moines. And this board's going to have to make a decision when regionalization moves forward, whether we treat Maffett Lake Park like we treat Waterworks Park, and that this body continues to maintain and provide the security and make decisions about this piece of property and that sort of thing. Or is it something that we transfer like other assets to Central Iowa Waterworks? Is that fairly stated, Ted?
That is fairly stable.
And that's a decision that will come when we really finalize that list of assets to be transferred, correct?
That is a decision that will need to be made this summer. That's exactly right. That's a great point. And I will tell you that in my initial thoughts, I thought we would keep the park.
Me too.
And as I think about the maintenance costs and the responsibility for the dam, shoreline and other facilities out there, I think we need to think carefully about whether that's in the best interest of our customers.
Well, and rightfully, are we the right stewards? I mean, we do have a special interest because of the Des Moines property, but are we the right stewards for that land? And like you, I agreed that this would, I just assumed this to be this until somebody named Kyle said something differently. And it's made us stop and think, but I do think it's something I put on the table because I do think it's something that we need to think about and we need to do it and give it appropriate thought.
It is, and this is a great opportunity to bring that up. It's a big decision.
So who manages and who interacts with the Flynn's? Is that the grounds crew?
Yeah, Jessica, and she's online, I think, Michelle, is she not? Jessica manages our relationship with the Flynn's.
Okay. I don't have any additional questions regarding that. I was just, wondering how that relationship was handled.
Yeah, once we bid it, then Jessica has historically been the contact with the producer and works with them and deals with them on access and questions related to the cover crops and just making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do in terms of the requirements of the agreement. That's all in Jesse's.
Any other questions or discussion? And let's go ahead and take a vote regarding the chairperson, authorizing the chairperson to execute the limited and non-exclusive license agreement for the right to farm Des Moines Water Works agricultural land for the 2023 crop year. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Great. Carries. Our next item is 3F, license agreement for the right to harvest grass hay at Moffett Reservoir.
Andrea, very parallel to what we just did. This is all land that it's in the watershed of Moffett Reservoir. So it's essentially all of the land that Des Moines Water Works currently owns that drains into Moffett Reservoir that is not timber. And so instead of our ground crew having to mow it, we've historically licensed that land to a producer to harvest the hay, and they pay us rent, and then they have the right to harvest the hay for their own use or for sale. Similar, Andrea, to the farm lease license, there are some expectations, requirements. I think we only allow them to cut hay twice a year. But it's a smaller area, it's all drain, all drains into the reservoir, and it is 10 acres more this year than it has been before because of that 10 acres of cropland that we're converting to hay. And we're looking to extend this agreement 1 year, 1 year. Planning to bid this again next year. I think the last time we did this, we only had one bidder. First time we did it, we had more than one.
So I need a motion to authorize the chairperson to execute the limited and non-exclusive license agreement for the right, oops. Right, is that right? That's right. The right to farm Des Moines Water Works agricultural land.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Not hearing any. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 3G, the Raccoon Valley Little League Inc. agreement for the use of Waterworks property.
Andrea, this is one of 3 areas of Des Moines Waterworks property that we license to youth sports organizations. We're going to talk about 2 of them today, the Raccoon Valley Little League and the Des Moines Soccer Club, which is there along Park Avenue. The third is the football fields that are at the corner of 30th and George Flagg. Our youth sports organization that had been licensing that for use has opted not to continue using it, and so we're actually going to have to bid that out separately. But these 2, G and H, these 2 items are actually renewing, extending the agreements that we have with Raccoon Valley Little League and the Des Moines Soccer Group. These are a little different than the land leases. We actually tell them how much they're going to pay us, and then they tell us what they're going to do on the property. Raccoon Valley and Soccer South, I can't get used to not calling it Soccer South because it was Soccer South for so long. The Des Moines Soccer Club have been there for many, many years, and they are both very good stewards of the property. They're providing what we believe to be value to the community. Haven't had anyone else show interest in those sites. Charge them $70 an acre, which is a very favorable rate for them. We did some analysis a few years ago of what cities and counties and other agencies charge for youth sports organizations to use their land. And in most cases, they don't charge them any. But we thought $70 an acre was reasonable. It helps cover our costs for administrative agreements. So that's about it. But the goal is to provide value to the community on this land, and it prevents us from needing to maintain it, mow it, lease it, manage it, so we can get that benefit as well. This first agreement with Raccoon Valley Little League, they're at the far western end of the park, beyond west of things that we manage as Waterworks Park. We're looking to extend their executing for 3 more years. That was expired.
So I need a motion to authorize the chairperson to execute the Raccoon Valley Little League Inc. agreement for the use of Waterworks property for a 3-year term to expire on December 31st, 2025.
So
Second.
Ed, late last year, there were some concerns raised by Raccoon Valley about this agreement. They were, I recall correctly, they raised money to put in some sort of a capital improvement like lights or something. Would this be something that they could get back? And that was one thing they were asking about. I'm assuming because we're voting on this, that those discussions happened and they're satisfied with their ability to recover investments like that, or
That's my understanding, or I don't know if satisfied would be the right word, that they've come to terms. I don't know if Kyle or Jessica have any that conversation with them.
We met with them and talked a little bit about improvements that they were making, and we did not have any intention of renewing these leases. Really nothing long range plan, this land, what it's being used for today. I think we satisfied the questions after this.
I don't think they have any immediate plans. I don't think they're out there raising money right now for anything like that. So that's something they could come back to us with if they got that far down the road, correct?
They would like to have a longer lease. You know, if somebody's going to invest tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in lights, they want to know they're going to be there for 3 years. We have always pushed back on that. We've gotten similar questions from some of the other youth sports groups about long-term leases. And we've always given them kind of the same perspective, that we don't have anything in our long-range plans to use that property for anything else, but we can't encumber it for 40 years, just in case. So we've been doing these 3-year agreements for decades. I don't see any reason that we will not do that going forward, but we can't guarantee, or we have resisted the request to enter into long-term agreements with all of these sports
Well, I
organizations.
must remember a few years ago, we did have a problem with someone, with one of the groups. So, I mean, in my mind, as long as they're good stewards of the land, and I live right off the park, I love driving by there and seeing families out there and, you know, kids, and rain or shine, they are out there. But, you know, I think it's kind of a two-way thing. They take good care of it. But we would love to be able to. But we have had an incident in the not too distant past that the land was trashed and they didn't pick up their garbage. And so this is a good way to make sure that we all take care of it.
Well, that's good. I appreciate Kyle. I appreciate having those conversations, and they know they can come back and talk to us. So that's good.
Are these, I'm assuming, are nonprofit organizations? No.
You know, I assume. so.
I know Raccoon Valley is. I don't know as much about soccer, but I assume they are. I know Raccoon Valley is.
I was just curious. I mean, obviously it's community good. And I would imagine most youth sports leagues are nonprofits, but you know, I think if we're trying to have favorable terms, for people in the community, probably hopefully they're not. You know,
Yeah, especially if they're on the city. We'll follow up on that.
They're thinking about how we need to bid out that, the football field area as a third kind of rec space. Wasn't there a group that came to talk to us a couple of years, 2019, about looking for land for a soccer field?
Somebody came to us and wanted land for a cricket pitch. Right? Was it also soccer? We'll be reaching out.
So I guess my ultimate question is, if it's football fields right now, can it be anything?
From our perspective. We did a rental agreement or a request for proposals or whatever you want to call it. I don't remember what we called it, but just a handful of years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. After the previous tenants left. Went through the process. And I believe we opened it up to any youth sports. That's kind of what we said. It needs to be youth sports. And we do have had a stipulation in there that they had to use the property for their own purposes and their own leagues and their own sports. They couldn't rent it to anyone else, you know, as a kind of a profit center, which we were having a little bit of trouble with that now. Previous occupants. But I don't believe we restricted it to just football. I don't think we would do that.
Both entities are nonprofit.
Okay, I figured.
Thanks, John.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, then let's go ahead and take the vote. Again, authorize the chairperson to execute the Raccoon Valley Little League agreement. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Moving on then to similar agenda item, but the focus here is with the Des Moines Soccer Club and an agreement for the use of the waterworks property.
Andrew, I think you covered it. It's similar. It's soccer. It's out along Park Avenue. $70 an acre.
So can I get a motion authorizing the chairperson to execute the Des Moines Soccer Club agreement for the use of waterworks property for a 3-year term to expire on December 31st, 2025?
Second.
All those in favor? I just assume you guys don't want to talk about it. All right.
Baseball and soccer.
Okay, so now we're at that point for information items. And we'll start with board committee reports. First up is the Finance and Audit Committee.
We did not meet, so nothing to report.
Okay, and the Planning Committee.
We had a great meeting, and I think maybe challenging. Because we, as a board, we were talking a lot about safety. And I think really challenging ourselves to say, do we know everything that's going on? And we had a presentation that was made to us regarding a new tracking mechanism. And, you know, we pushed back a little bit, I'm gonna have to say, and said tracking is great, but what are you going to do with the information? Are the supervisors being made aware of the information? Does it help them ensure that the training that needs to be done happens? So it was a very spirited, I'll say, conversation. I did ask Graham if he would make a couple of comments, because I thought as we kind of wrapped it up and really delivered what it is that we're trying to do as a board around safety, I thought you made some excellent points on the culture, and I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, what we appreciated the information on the tracking, that's the kind of foundation that you stand on to make sure that you're tracking the training and that sort of thing. But the discussion that we had with Ted and the others during that committee meeting, it's an extension of discussions we've been having for the last few months, and that is, and we had at this table last time, I remember Alex saying, you know, it's one thing to take the training, but does it make it out into the field? And that's the important thing. Are these translating into behaviors out into the field? And that's the ongoing step that we've charged Ted with, is to make sure that he's working with all of our workers, union and others, to make sure that we're implementing that and creating what we're calling, you know, a culture of safety. You know, a culture of safety works in an organization when an employee raises his or her hand or stops the forklift from moving forward and says, you know, we're not training well, or I don't feel safe in this organization, or we need to do something else. And we've got a ways to go before we get to that point. But that's the goal, is that we have an organization where every employee, whether they've been on the job for 30 years or 30 days, feels empowered to raise their voice, you know, when it comes to safety. And that's the overall goal that we talked about, Sue, right? I mean, and that's, I think that this board talked about at our last board meeting, that we want to continue to push forward. And I imagine in your comments, you're gonna talk a little bit about OSHA, Ted, maybe in your comments today, but I mean, in you know, as we deal with incidents and near incidents here at Waterworks, that creating that culture of safety is job number one. And I think that's the real takeaway from that meeting. And I think we agreed that this meeting on, you know, the tracking system was a great first meeting, and we look forward to the next meetings, whatever those are, to make sure that we're implementing safety in this organization. And I know Ted has been encouraged and is continuing to find ways to make sure that, as I say, everybody from union leadership to union members to, you know, every employee has a voice in deciding how those training sessions are implemented and how we make sure that they're effective.
There were a couple of slides, I think, because, you know, we try to be good board members. It really brought about questions that I think we presented. And you've all received the slides, you know, what was presented, I'm sure. But there was one that talked about a training that was to be delivered to 12 individuals, but only 6 had completed it. So to me, my question was, why was it scheduled then if only 6 people could complete it? I mean, that's additional time and money and expense. And then how do you make sure that the other 6 are ever trained? So, you know, I think we pushed back as a board and said, how is that calculated into the performance review? And if someone ever wants to be promoted, you know, are they taking advantage? And I mean, if they're on vacation, they're on vacation, but maybe they say, are there 4 of the 12 people on vacation? Maybe we schedule it at another time. So I did push back and ask Doug to help Ted, because Ted can't do all this. But you know, when it comes to performance, I think we have to involve HR and supervisors, and so it's everyone's job. But as Graham said, I think we want to hear about a lot more about this. As board members, we want to be much more involved.
I appreciate that update. You know, I think as we've all been lifting up that conversation of safety, so much so in the importance that the board feels it has, that we have made it a priority to include it in our agenda item. So it is a topic and create space for it to be discussed on a monthly basis. So I look forward to continuing to see how this plays out with the new tracking system and the items that you also discussed and shared with staff along the way.
And Andrew, I think it's as we make our way on this, you know, as you and Ted and Sue think about future agendas, whether they're at the board table or at the committee tables, you know, thinking about the appropriate ways for us to get the information, right? I mean, safety is one of these things. It's easy to say we're all for it,
Right.
We want to do it, but I do think we need to be thoughtful about, you know, when is the time to schedule a meeting to talk about
Right.
this issue. And I don't know, I don't have that, but we should all have it in our you know, reminder file that it's a time to have another discussion on safety.
That's a great point.
And to reach out again to the union to make sure that they're pushing us and asking, and we're hearing those voices as often as we can.
You know, I'm just going to say if it's a standing item on planning, I would welcome it. You know, any kind of update. We made a lot of recommendations. Maybe it can be just brief, like, okay, now here's what we're doing today. Or Doug has met with all the supervisors, and they are now incorporated some
I like
performance review. But it doesn't have to be a 30-minute presentation, but if this is the most important thing to us as a board, then we need to talk about it.
That's a perfect way to do it. I would suggest you came up with a better idea than I did. I mean, that's the moment where we say, all right, what should we be looking at next? What are we, what information are we lacking? So,
Incorporating it just as every planning item or every committee meeting has a CEO and general manager's comments.
yeah, but
Be including a tick there for just a safety conversation, safety update.
I like it.
Moving down the line, the Stowe Foundation, we got a great presentation from you last meeting. Any additional
No.
information to share?
Well, yeah, a little bit. First of all, I really do thank everybody for listening to the presentation and providing feedback. I mean, we have had, over the last month, we've had a number of very exciting meetings, which I won't go into details about making this thing a reality. One meeting that did happen, which I had mentioned at our meeting or previewed at our meeting a month ago, was forming a relationship with the School of Education at Drake. And they are going to be a partner and take a lead on forming a, let's call it a council, to develop curriculum and activities. And we are going to engage with them this summer to have some graduate students and some undergraduate students begin researching what's out there in curriculum and developing even a prototype model of probably starting at that late elementary school, early middle school level. So a prototype of curriculum. And so imagine students would receive some sort of a curriculum activities before they came to visit Waterworks Park, something when they visited Waterworks Park, and something when they went back. And you could modify that for students that never came to the park as well. So that's going to happen this summer, which is really exciting. And then the art piece continues to get some real momentum too. So stay tuned.
It's exciting. Any update for the botanical garden?
Nope, things are great. It's spring out there. It's been good to be out there all winter. The palm tree came down, as you saw. It's gone, but new one's gonna be planted. But I don't have any report on that.
Join Waterworks Park Foundation. It's kind of a similar situation. We talked about the agreement with the city being completed and executed. There's a lot of exciting programming starting to shape up into the summer. Rag Ride coming through is, I think, going to engulf a lot of the capacity for the Park Foundation and figuring out how to take advantage of that opportunity and from both a future planning standpoint as well as a water quality education opportunity. I guess the other items to note really is that we also had heard from Graham at that meeting as well, and you've received a lot of, I think, positive feedback from the Park Foundation and how those how their mission and intent really mirrors and matches what the Stowe Foundation is trying to accomplish with this outdoor classroom space.
And I'll just add on to that. I mean, that's what we're trying to do with the classroom now. I mean, we went to the Park Foundation. We're trying to meet with organizations at Des Moines to obviously tell them about what we're doing, but then again, create things that it fits into the other things they're doing. So that's kind of what we're spending our time.
I don't know if Pat's online, but if you had anything to add.
The only thing is that in less than a month, we'll be kicking off that extravaganza, which I haven't participated in before, so I'm kind of excited to see what that's all about.
Great, thank you. That's a great reminder. The Earth Day extravaganza is a signature event for the Park Foundation where folks get into the park and look for what this year will be plastic eggs that can then be traded in for hand-blown glass eggs. It's always been a terrific turnout, so much so that they've run out of eggs well before people stop showing up. But the additional piece there is lets people know about all the different areas to explore in the park. And there's usually a trash cleanup component to it, but they've really struggled in the past to find enough trash to to really sell that point. So now it's more about just, you know, kind of being in the park and exploring everything that it has to offer.
And in the last meeting, when we were talking about right going through, we talked about insurance. I mentioned some kind of a bond. To me, there's a big difference between having the extravaganza and having rag come through. What did we find out on that?
I can share a little bit on that. We have been, staff has been following up on all of the points that have been raised about access and security and insurance. And I can tell you that rag planning has really ramped up in the last month. So we're having regular meetings. Kyle and Jessica have been meeting with the rag team, the Polk County Emergency Management, and various organizations in Des Moines to understand what's going to happen there and how we're going to manage having, who knows, 50,000 people in the park on Wednesday, the 26th of July. You know, so often these events are on weekends, the big events in the park. And this is going to start around noon on a Wednesday and take over the park. I'm not even sure how I'm going to get out of the park. We're working on all of those things. I will say, I don't want to forget, we are planning to provide the board an update at the May planning committee. Meeting. That's going to be the topic of discussion. It's rag plan. Donna Heckman is working with insurance requirements in terms of what we're going to ask them to have for insurance and making sure that we're confident that we're covered in terms of should there be any damage to the facilities.
So Ted, there wasn't, I mean, they don't have a signed contract, done deal. You can have the space. We still have an opportunity to tell them what we need from them to protect our land. Is that correct?
Kyle, can you help me with that? I don't know that they've signed the agreement yet.
They've signed the agreements, they're still working through all the details and
And who's they? Are we talking right people or foundation?
I think it's a combination of our foundation, they have greater 40.
Convention bureau. Is that a convention bureau or?
Partnership?
But there's other entities involved that are helping to pay for the concerts, different aspects of that. They just put a cost estimate together. What is it all cost of all of this, including all of the security, extra officers, things like that. They're really early at the stage of the planning, but a lot is being done, a lot of over the last couple of weeks. So we just had a meeting earlier in the week discussing.
So Sue, I know that, you know, everything that is in relation to happening at the park, from concerts, the food vendor, camping, that Sam Carroll has been tasked with being the head of coordinating and head of those committees. And has invited folks, you know, from the Park Foundation to participate in those committees, but it's open beyond that to various community members or other partners as well. So, but I guess what I don't know when it comes to those finer details, I would assume, like you said, you guys just had a meeting the other day that Waterworks staff is also involved in the more logistical items, not just, you know, managing the contracts of what food vendors are going to be in here, but more of that access, security, insurance.
Yes, there's a, we're also working with Polk County. We have a meeting with Polk County Emergency Management staff to discuss this about severe weather, security, all those items. But yes, this is going to be a huge event, probably the largest event in the park we've ever seen. So we're working through those details. And have all those information in the next month. We'll be able to share and plan.
So that will come back to us. I mean, if they come back and say, we're gonna have $10,000 of insurance, we don't have the right as a board to say that's not acceptable, or I'm just, we've put all this money into the park. And, you know, people are gonna come here that may not have love for it. It's a great event. I'm glad we're doing it, but if there's damage done. Will we have enough insurance to cover it if stage areas or the bathroom is destroyed? Then I just want to protect the yes.
A lot of questions there, but we can kind of unpack all that. It would not be typical for a detail like that to come to. So, or has interest in including insurance requirements on this contract, that would be different than that would pass out. We can certainly inform them what the insurance requirements are. And, not 50,000 versus events, but we have an intensive part of it. Insurance requirements in there. It's the big numbers. Because that's why. Share that. See. Yeah, it's always an interesting question. Will there be enough insurance? I hope so. How much is enough? It's hard to answer, but we will have all the events in the park have insurance requirements. I can't. But we have a pretty standard.
There's standard insurance requirements. I don't have committed numbers to memory, but it's at least $1 million on sort of umbrella coverage and then various other supplements depending upon the type of coverage for, workers' compensation, depending on the employees who are there. If anybody's injured while employed, by a security contract or something like that, there'd be insurance required for that. So.
And then is our insurance broker also made aware of this, so we would have that support as well?
Well, if it's a covered claim, if there were damage to an item that had a park. And if we're I mean, we would provide notice to the carrier, we would need to alert them in advance. If it's covered, it'll be covered, whether we've told them there's an event in the park or not. If it's not covered by the policy, then whether we've given them advance notice or not, it's not going to change the coverage that we have.
We haven't historically gone to our broker and said, hey, this event's happening. Should we have some of the kind of coverage?
And they're very. They'll be able to.
I just think anything we could do, we never had. And so I'm gonna be you risk it first person to just say, let's just make sure that we have everything.
So I think it's appropriate, what you're asking for, what's been outlined here, that at the May meeting, we have this as a topic. I mean, we're not asking or I'm not asking that we change whatever the procedures are out there to, we don't need to create another layer of oversight. However, it's incumbent on this board to be informed and make sure we're doing it right, because should something happen, people are going to point their finger at Moines Waterworks. And so, we need to make sure that we're doing it right. Who's going to pick up the garbage and who's going to make sure the porta potties are moved and do all those things? And that's something you guys do every day. But because it's the size of it is and the notoriety of it is, I think coming in May is a good time to do that. And if we had concerns, we can voice them at the time. But I don't think we're asking to have another layer in certain process.
Understood. Now, we have that slated for May.
I think that's appropriate, don't you, Sue? Yeah,
We can all attend the.
right. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be on the board.
And I think it's an appropriate thing to continue to bring up, when you first brought it up, I was thinking trash and, damage to the lawn or whatnot. But then I started thinking, how are we gonna keep people out of the ponds? How are we gonna? Right. And, our actual built facility and things like that. So no, I think it's appropriate to continue to ask about. Mike, do you have anything else that we missed?
Nope.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to you, Ted, for the CEO.
We've already touched on two of the things I was going to share. issue. But did also want to mention the PFAS regulations or those regulations that in house. And these have been a long time coming. They've it's kind of been a roller coaster where they had a health advisory with 70 parts of the combination of two gas compounds. And then a year or so ago, they in June they issued a health advisory for all of 70 parts of the all the way down to 0.004 parts of the below of science is intact. And that created quite a stir in a lot of the jurisprudence. 1614, on the 14th of March, they issued proposed standards for two PFAS compounds that stand in 4 parts per billion, and then 4 others that would give ratio calculation. These folks have looked at our samples. We've been taking very proactive taking samples since we discovered that there's this contamination. Our base, going to the airport. That's the only source of PFAS that we see. It's there when we became aware of that. We started doing sampling. We looked at all of those samples. All there was one, and usual sample is 6 parts per billion compounds. All of the rest of our samples have been below this 4 part standard. Typically, we believe that we are currently in compliance with those regulations. Compliance with regulations, but we are doing. We're going to continue to do our testing. We need to understand the seasonal variability, the water flow, the river creeks. Storm sewers variability. We need to understand where the small amounts of PFAS small. So we will continue to do our sampling, but the message is that are moving to compliance with those rules. If it
Do I remember seeing the paper something about West Moines having concerns with PFAS in their fire station? You know, anything about where they set, what their levels are?
West Moines had one well, one of their shallow wells that showed fairly significant contamination. Because of that one well, did their testing. They tested our water, not as tested West Moines, and they did. West Moines taking that well out of service, but they have emergency status and use it. And so they are also in compliance. They had a well that was near the fire station that had fairly high levels of more than gas compound. They're no longer using that well. There has been some media coverage of this. Both the Moines Register, I know, have an article for this. Able here, our changes in our operations are sampling. We're not even on required sampling. We are not sampling anyway.
That it really brought really complicated issue down. It's the level that anyone could understand what this is and you know about. So more education to our through all of our social media and our everything we send out to customers, the better. But nice.
Lastly, Andrea, I want to direct the board's attention to safety updates. packet. And we have heard back, we should have based on their evaluation of the. Last year. And made that determination. That's some corrections. I also want to point out, we got the injuries and accidents listed in near misses. Update. Also, Sue, you have to reference this very training that at the time of the planning committee meeting, rating frequency training, this is one of the main trainings. The point here is to demonstrate the track we have now and how it works. We had a training that was assigned to 12 people. This rating frequency awareness helps and be exposed to antennas and radio frequency. At the time of the planning committee, 6 of them, a couple of progress before had started, there's a discussion about why. Not happening. There are various reasons why they all attend the training at the same time. Value of this tool, though, is that we know that as you can see, just for that one training, it's a small training, but involving you know that each training, many of which are much larger. Higher road bases, severe level awareness is 210 people. Track with making sure that follow up. There's always somebody who's on vacation or somebody around. All it's a lot, but this is going to help us ensure that it's part of the ratings are working. We're working right now on, okay, now we know, but how can we get their supervisor a monthly or a weekly email that says, hey, here are people reporting to do, and here are the trainings that they haven't finished. And we're hoping that we can get them follow up. It's easier as opposed to them having to go into training history. So trying to use that to go into this. We're also trying to put together kind of a amalgamated tracking mechanism so we can keep track of how are we doing on our goal. It's a little challenging, especially early in the year. We assign these trainings. So we haven't figured out a way yet to adjust for the ones that do as of today, as opposed to the ones that not. We're going to keep working on this. We'll be bringing it up at each board meeting. We'll be sharing and planning some updates on what we're doing. And if the board would like to see things in a different way, would like to know more detail on, okay, what were the 2 injuries? What would the accidents? We can provide the information.
Along those lines, I questioned about the 42% actual goal resolved.
Yeah.
And what that means, how that works, and I don't know if I need to know the answer today. So I don't know how weedy I'm asking you to get, but maybe that's something.
You know, I don't think it's too weedy. Don't back me on that. Like the Boston that's here, but people report near misses, and some of them are things that we can take action on, things that we can fix. And some of them are just not. They're awareness. Somebody notices water on the floor and they wipe it out. That's something that actually. That's probably not a good example, because that's probably one that's actually. Somebody says, hey, there's a new dog in this house. Just let's get about workforce that we have in the house. Some things are actionable, we need to follow up, and some are not. Some are just awareness. If they're actionable, we're tracking how many of those are resolved. So, well, you know, if there's a broken stair, that's something that needs action. You can go out and fix it. And then it's part of the 42%. If you need a railing along the edge of the roof at the Sailor for Water Treatment Plant. Okay, well, that's actionable. We're not gonna be able to just run out. Design, fabricated and box. Budget. And have someone come, make a contract, help install that, and it can take a long period of time. Right, to resolve some of those. So those would be part of the 58% of our.
Okay, so what I'm reading here and it's supposed to understand was that there are 16 misses. Some percentage of that 16 can be resolved with action. And of those that can be resolved, only 42% of them have been. So I mean, those that could be resolved with action could be 2 and kind of resolve one of them.
Right,
42%.
Yeah.
Okay,
I can't do the math in my head, but it's probably, 7, 8, 10, I don't know, that are action. And we've done 40%.
right, okay.
Those number off the top of my head, but maybe we could list the total number of numbers that are actionable. That would be- But yeah, you got it, that's exactly right. And, as the year goes on, our goal is that within the year, 75% of the action.
Okay,
Clear, not all of them. Budget items is something that plan, communication, contract. Real beauty of this list, though, is it doesn't go away at the end of the year. So even though last year, Bill shared a plan. Even though last year we didn't get to 100%, we're still gaining on last year's ones in action. They're still there. Still track them through this process, and we still are chipping away at those budgeted items, whatever they are, right? That all of those. Our goal is to be 75% of it.
Andrea, we had trouble too with understanding the term near miss, that near misses. I mean, it's almost like safety. Avoidance opportunities for something, I mean, near misses. You just kind of, that is so, we ask the same
Yeah.
kind of questions, and then like, you can.
I know.
It's a term of art, that's what they call it in the city.
Yeah.
People say, well, isn't it a near accident?
Yeah.
Or a near injury? Yes, but it's just, that's what they call it. Near misses. Everybody who has a safety program, industrial safety. It's a near miss.
And slightly different topic. I had a meeting yesterday with Jay Byers over at the partnership, and it occurs to me with Jennifer Terry's position being open right now, maybe tasking a team and to chime in on this. I think we should offer to provide some sort of an update to the partnership as they begin planning for the DC about where things are with regionalization. Just so that we're out in front of it. I was thinking, providing them the information would be worthwhile. I shared with Jay where we were and told him that this agreement would be going out and likely seeing it, but I think it might make sense. Don't you think, Sue?
I
Just to do,
totally agree, because when you're on the partnership, a lot of those staffers are getting questions about, to their elected officials about law firms,
right,
they don't understand. Sometimes the constituent doesn't understand city, county, state, federal. But definitely the staff up there needs to be made aware. And last year Ted did a lot of that.
absolutely.
I know he's going to do this year.
But it's kind of nice to be able to go and make the offer when we're not asking for anything.
Yeah, so, well, that, and it's always nice to give them information.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I thought about last.
Right.
It is a good point. That reminds me of the taxpayers association.
That's another one.
Yep. Yep.
They have a program, really great program too. Maybe they can slate you in for April or May.
Yeah, I think, we've done a presentation before. We would love to go there and tell them. Now,
And the timing. Yeah, and the timing would be good when you get that ball rolling about right now. You get the agreement out, and then we start getting feedback from communities. It will help get that thing signed, you know, it'll push it down the pike. So
yeah, it's almost like we need to get it out. Amy and I are already planning our road show. Maybe we get questions. But it would be a great time to, you know, the taxpayers association.
it is interesting, you do pivot right now. I mean, you pivot from, we had to get the agreement together. And now, starting tomorrow, you pivot to getting the agreement signed. And we know well, because of this process, that this thing could bog down over the summer, because not every community has the same sense of urgency. So you're gonna absolutely be on a roadshow, but that's the next job, is pushing this, getting the pens out.
The taxpayer association, I'm pretty sure also help with the other bit of just the public engagement or the public awareness of it. And, you know, they can play a role in ensuring that, the communities are voicing their support to their elected officials or that need to continue to sign on the line. Anything, I don't even know where that fits in anymore. I want to call your attention to, item 4D, the contract status and professional service agreements. But also in doing so, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that? You brought up? Okay. Well, then I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Thank you, everyone.
So.
Oh, here.